Joy leads to spiritual growth. The third kind of happiness referred to above is the happiness in spiritual development. This kind of happiness is generated from within an individual. It arises simultaneously with the general development of one's life, and it accompanies progress in Dhamma practice. The development of the body, moral conduct, the mind, and wisdom may be referred to as spiritual cultivation or Dhamma practice. When this development progresses, one experiences this spiritual happiness. Buddha gave a teaching on 5 factors of happiness in spiritual development, which are collectively given the unusual name of concentration of the Dhamma, Dhamma Samadhi. Although this group is not exclusively referred to as happiness, sukha, happiness is one of the factors. Moreover, all of the other factors are attributes of happiness and are interconnected with happiness. Since our present discussion is on happiness, we can thus refer to this group as factors of happiness. The 5 factors contained in this group refer to specific mind states, which can be called happy mind states, sukha bhava. The Buddha repeatedly stressed that someone whose Dhamma practice bears fruit will grow in these 5 qualities. Conversely, if someone practices the Dhamma, yet these 5 qualities fail to arise, there will be no hope of true success. One example the Buddha gave is of someone who listens to the Dhamma and then investigates it. If he or she practices correctly, wisdom deepens and these 5 mind states arise. Similar to social happiness, these 5 factors of happiness in spiritual development are based on wholesome enthusiasm, chanda, and they unfold in an ordered sequence, but they are not expressed outwardly. They exist as direct and immediate attributes of the mind. These factors are as follows. 1. Joy, pamoja, cheerfulness, gladness. This is a fundamental attribute of the mind, which people should sustain at all times. In the Dhammapada it states, full of joy, confident in the Buddha's teaching, a bhikkhu will attain the peaceful state, the stilling of formations, the bliss supreme. Another verse describes a monk who has practiced well and correctly, and ends, full of joy, he will make an end of suffering. Joy is a vital innate quality, indicating that one is progressing in spiritual practice and has the potential to develop further. When one is full of joy, it is possible to realize Nibbana, or one is close to Nibbana. 2. Delight, piety. Bliss, rapture, with joy there is delight. 3. Tranquility, passaddhi. Serenity, calm, physical and mental relaxation. This factor acts as the link between the body and mind. If the body is tense, the mind is tense. If the mind is stressed, the body is stressed. With delight, there is tranquility and relaxation. 4. Happiness, sukha. Sense of mental refreshment, ease, absence of affliction and stress. With the arising of tranquility, there is happiness. 5. Concentration, samadhi, one-pointedness of mind, steadiness of mind, absence of mental disturbance, attention rests on a chosen object as desired. With the arising of happiness, there is the potential for concentration. Concentration acts as the link to wisdom. It prepares the mind for the effective application of wisdom. And when wisdom is developed, any other aspect of spiritual development is optimized and progresses smoothly. The presence of these 5 factors is crucial to the spiritual development of human beings. When people are endowed with these factors, their education and work proceeds effectively, and their entire Dhamma practice is steady and reliable. If people practice incorrectly, the opposite qualities like trouble and stress arise. There is then an absence of joy, delight, tranquility, and happiness, and the mind remains scattered. One then experiences inner disturbance and obstruction. The mind is imbalanced and ill at ease. The result is a lack of progress or success. If one possesses these 5 complementary factors, they will automatically be integrated with spiritual qualities connected to society, in particular the 4 divine abidings. When one generates loving kindness towards others, one engages in self-development. The performing of benevolent deeds is simultaneously a way to practice the Dhamma within oneself. By acting kindly, one develops spiritually. At the same time, by radiating a sense of loving kindness, joy arises within. Joy is then followed by the other qualities, for example, of delight. Similarly, when one compassionately aids someone who is suffering, once that person is healthy and at ease, one experiences delight, which is then followed by other qualities, including happiness. If one is continually cheerful, relaxed, and calm, wherever one goes, one enhances one's social environment. Whomever one meets and speaks to feels at ease and shares in one's happiness. One thus induces happiness and engenders spiritual qualities in others. One supports others' spiritual development. When one walks on the correct path, these positive factors arise in a natural sequence. They are all interconnected. They are all aspects of happiness. A simple method of Dhamma practice is thus to maintain one's mind in a state of cheerfulness. Ideally, one combines this with loving kindness. Although it may not be one's intention, one's complexion will appear pleasing and attractive to others. One will have many cooperative and helpful friends. One will live with others in peace. One's community will prosper, and one's work will reach success. Here let us compare these 3 kinds of happiness: sense pleasure, social happiness, and happiness of spiritual development. Sense pleasure is derived from external material things obtained for one's own personal benefit. Each separate individual desires or covets these things, and thus sense desire breeds competition and conflict. It therefore requires caution and constraint. The purpose of the five precepts is to regulate sense desire, to manage the pursuit and consumption of material things, and to prevent people from creating and an excessive amount of trouble and oppression for each other. However much people consume or contest for material things, one can wish that it does not reach the extent that the world becomes engulfed in flames. The five precepts exist as a reminder that sense desire requires supervision and restraint. Social happiness is generated by providing happiness to others and to society. It stems from a heart of loving kindness and compassion, the desire to see others at ease, and is thus a shared mutual happiness. The five happiness factors of spiritual development begin with joy, arise from within a person, and have no negative effects on others. They may arise by doing good to others, and they are the starting point of spreading goodness outwards. So although it is an internal personal happiness, it brings about a connection with others. It fosters virtue and mutual assistance. The latter two kinds of happiness cause no harm. Rather, they are supportive to both the individual and to society. They help people to mitigate the harm from pursuing sense pleasure, and they introduce people to a way of enjoying sense pleasure, promoting mutual well-being. Moreover, they bring a refinement to people's lives and provide people with a way out, leading to higher levels of spiritual development. These two kinds of happiness should thus be given great emphasis. A cultivated mind is easily content. As mentioned earlier, sense pleasure is the most important matter for ordinary human beings, but because it involves vying with other people, one must manage it well and practice restraint. The five precepts were established in order to ensure that the pursuit of sense pleasure and consumption of desirable objects remains within proper boundaries. However much one seeks pleasure and competes with others, don't let it be a cause for severe trouble, to the extent that the world enters an era of oppression. When human beings are established in the five precepts, society is relatively stable, but this is no guarantee that people will be very happy. To improve the life of individuals and society, people must develop themselves further. This is the purpose of the 8 precepts. After one has sought pleasure by relying on external material things for 7 or 8 days, one sets aside one day in order to live more simply and to reduce one's dependency on these things. The time one normally uses to gratify one's own desires, one uses for other objectives. By keeping the 8 precepts on the observance day, Uposatha, which falls on either the 8th or the 15th day of the waxing moon, or the 8th or 14th or 15th day of the waning moon, i.e. about 4 times per month. The 5 precepts focus on the non-harming of other people. In the 8 precepts, the 3rd precept is changed to abstaining from sexual activity, and 3 additional precepts were added. Both the variation on the 3rd precept and the additional 3 precepts for matters concerning the individual. They do not directly pertain to other people. The three additional precepts are: sixth precept, to refrain from eating at the improper time, that is, after midday. On this day one need not pander to the tongue. Seventh precept, to refrain from singing, dancing, music, and various forms of entertainment that please the eye and ear. The eighth precept, to abstain from indulging in the pleasures of tactile sensation derived from lying on soft and luxuriant mattresses. One day each week is reserved for self-training. It is an easy method of developing happiness, independent of external things. Although the Buddha acknowledged that seeking pleasure from material things is a personal matter, he said that if people are not careful, their happiness will become dependent on these things. Eventually, no amount of these things will suffice to provide them with happiness. They will keep trying to acquire more until they end up oppressing others. To maintain one's independence, one thus needs to train oneself. One may have pampered oneself with good food and delicious flavors for 7 days. On the 8th day one practices by applying the 6th precept in order to see whether one can still be happy without following the desires of one's palate. Instead of delicious tastes, one now emphasizes physical health and quality of life. Rather than following the desires of the palate, one eats just enough to sustain the body. The saying goes for the eyes and ears. For 7 days one entertains oneself by way of sights and sounds. On the 8th day one applies the 7th precept and learns to live without these amusements. One uses one's time instead of other purposes. One uses one's time instead for other purposes, for instance, by practicing meditation, assisting other people, or benefiting society. One may normally sleep on a thick and comfortable mattress. On the 8th day one experiments by sleeping on a thin mat to see if one can be happy without relying on these comforts. By keeping these precepts, people are more vigilant and avoid an overdependence on and indulgence in material things. Such a training in virtuous conduct makes people easily happy, not prone to suffering, and mentally strong. It is conducive to the further development of happiness. It is the link to mental development and wisdom development. One may wish to verify or determine to what extent one's happiness is independent of material things. To do this, consider the following kinds of people. Many people abandon themselves to the pursuit of sense pleasure. They must eat delicious food, entertain themselves with various amusements, example television, and sleep in luxurious beds. And they are continually in search of more of these things and more exceptional things. Eventually their happiness becomes dependent on these things, which become indispensable. They are not able to live contentedly by themselves, because the only channel for accessing happiness is by way of these material things. Some people's happiness is completely tied up with these gratifying sense objects. If they have to do without, they become agitated, thinking I must have these things, otherwise I'll die. In this case, they have utterly lost their independence. Those people who train themselves by way of the 8 precepts, however, are able to live simply and find it easier to access happiness. They gradually become more self-reliant and flexible, and thus maintain their independence. In regard to gratifying sense objects, they will say, I can take them or leave them. If I have them, I'm comfortable, but I can live without them. Even if I must lay on a mat or on a wooden floor, I can sleep. Moreover, they are less likely to suffer chronic back pain. Some people with chronic back pain are ordered by their doctors to sleep on the floor. Later, one may gain a new level of proficiency. One will recognize that these fancy and extravagant things are unnecessary. In reference to these things, one will say, I can take them or leave them, or even, if I have them, it's okay, but it's fine not to have them, because I'll have more freedom and independence. Already an initial training in these matters will bring about greater independence, enabling us to use our time more beneficially and to find it easier to experience happiness. We will be able to derive an adequate and ample value from sense objects. We won't be driven to increase the quantity or degree of these things, while our level of happiness remains the same. While dwelling alone, one is able to experience happiness. If one encounters pleasurable sense objects, one engages with them with wise discernment. They may supplement one's already existing happiness. Simply beware that these things do not become essential for one's happiness. Otherwise, one will lose one's independence. In reference to the observance days, or Posata, the Buddha encouraged people to use the time they would normally be seeking pleasurable sense experiences to engage in beneficial activities, anavaja kamma. When one is not devoted to ministering to one's own personal pleasures, one is left with a lot of free time. On the observance days, one can use this spare time for wholesome purposes, say by seeking knowledge, reading Dhamma books, teaching children, meditating, helping orphans, or visiting the elderly. This is another stage of spiritual practice. When you have the opportunity, try and keep the Uposatha precepts once every 8 days. They are not that difficult and their benefits are great. They help maintain one's independence, enable one to live happily with few material possessions, are conducive to meditation and good health, enhance the quality of one's life, and provide one with extra time to engage in wholesome activities.